Dave from New Jersey. It's the SNL Nerds, the show where two comics from New Jersey nerd out about Saturday Night Live. I'm your co-host, John Trumbull.
And I'm your co-host, Darren Patterson.
Hey, Darren Patterson.
Hey, good sir. Happy 4th. Happy summer. Happy hot dog eating and explosions and fireworks and blowing your hands off with cheap explosions, fireworks you got from the local drugstore.
Yay!
Hey, America!
America! Yay! Yay!
Yeah.
So, we're celebrating the last Independence Day here.
This is it.
We had a good run, America.
Yeah, did we?
Oh, well, till towards the end there, almost 250 years.
Yeah, we petered out towards the end.
Yeah, that's the kindest way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, but instead of celebrating the death of our country, we decided to celebrate it with something more wholesome, something Americana.
Mm-hmm.
Because James Gunn is coming out with the big new Superman movie. We decided, hey, you know what? Let's put out some. You know what?
SNL has done a lot of Superman sketches over the years, and we were going back and forth, and we compiled a whole list, and there's a lot. There's like over a dozen sketches featuring Superman. So we thought, it'd be fun to like go through those and just see how they've done Superman comedy sketches through the years, and we found a lot of good stuff.
Yeah,
from the original cast up to today.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we figured, well, let's celebrate Superman, dagnabbit, because we are nerds about SNL, but we're also nerds about other things. And I don't sort of consider myself a comic book guy. Even, I like growing
Get
up.
out.
I like, wow. All right. Well, this is, wow. Okay. All right. But
okay. Yeah. You're not a hardcore comic book guy
no.
to the degree I am, but you're a fan of like the comic book media and stuff like
yes,
that.
I respect and appreciate the comic book medium. All right, I'm not here to say comic books are lame and for dorks. I would never say that.
I mean, you don't need to say that. I mean, it's self-evident.
Yes, of course. And as you see in my big macho bro jock energies, I'm like, comic books are for dorks.
Right.
But I just grew up reading like Archie, like funny comic books. So, but I don't know as much about like the DC Marvel world. Although I do appreciate the movies and I enjoy the movies. But like for you, this seems to be your wheelhouse. This seems to be your North Star.
Yeah, I've been reading comic books since I was about 6 or so, and collecting for, well, gosh, nearly 40 years now, and so I've written for Back Issue Magazine from Tomorrow's Publishing, and I even wrote an article once about Superman the movie's influence on the comic books, and I actually hit on the first sketch that we're going to talk about today, which has an interesting bit of trivia attached to it. So the first sketch we're doing is from January 1979, season 4, episode 10, with host Michael Palin, and it's called "What If Superman Grew Up in Germany." And it's basically the premise of what if Superman grew up in Germany during World War II.
Yeah, this sketch, this by today's standard, this sketch is pretty edgy.
This is wild. I mean,
this is so wild.
This really, it really does remind you what sort of edgy humor SNL was doing in the early years in particular. This one was written by Jim Downey.
The great Jim Downey.
Who's a favorite of ours here on the SNL Nerds podcast. And so it starts out with a talk show hosted by Jane Curtin. And she's got her guests are Garrett Morris and Gilda Radner. Yes, and she says, each week on the show, we ask a hypothetical question about a specific historical event. And tonight's question, like all our questions, comes from a Mr. Kevin O'Donnell, age 10, a paperboy from Alton, Illinois. And I'm like, I love the concept that all of their questions come from the same 10-year-old boy. That's hilarious.
I didn't even realize. I didn't even notice until you mentioned. It's like, oh yeah, they did say that.
Yeah. I'm looking at this. Is we actually have a transcript of this sketch on the SNL transcripts site, and it's also visible on Peacock. If you go to Peacock and go to season 4, you can see this sketch for your own self. So,
right, like most of the sketches we're going to talk about, you can either find on YouTube or Peacock, with the exception of one, but we'll get there.
Like I had to do a lot of detective work to find these. Like, a lot of them are on YouTube. Some of them are on Peacock. Some of them are on NBC.com. Others I had to go to Vimeo or TikTok to find them.
Yeah, there's one sketch that's only on TikTok, and actually another sketch that's only on Vimeo. But we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah. So I'm honestly amazed that we were able to find them all. So this asks the question of if Superman landed in Germany, as he was flown to Earth in the rocket ship from the exploding planet Krypton, and then it picks up in Berlin in 1943, and Michael Palin is playing Hitler.
Wow.
and he has a very funny monologue. He starts out, he says, "The Russians are swine, just 1 step above the Poles, 2 steps above the Gypsies, 4 steps above the homosexuals, 5 steps above the Negroes, 9 steps above the Dwarves, 15 steps above the Gypsy homosexuals, 27 steps above the Negro Gypsy homosexual Dwarves, and 43 steps above the Jews. Did I mention the homosexual Jews? Right." And it's very Python-esque.
Very much so. That is raw, uncut Python right there.
Yeah. And then after the meeting is over, they usher in 3 reporters from the Daily Planet. We have Lois Lanoff, played by Lorraine Newman, Jimmy Olstein, played by Al Franken, who assures Hitler that he's not Jewish, and that his parents were just. Oh no! Wait, I'm skipping ahead. He has Dutch ancestors on his father's side.
Yes,
and then
Olstein spelled E-Y-N.
Yes. And then the last reporter is Klaus Kent, played by Dan Aykroyd.
He beat Jesse Owens in 36.
Exactly. Yeah, Hitler immediately recognizes his name. He's like, "Oh, you're the one who beat Jesse Owens in 36." And while Klaus Kent is there, he detects there's a bomb in a briefcase that one of the generals left behind after the meeting. So he goes off into a janitor's closet and he pulls out one of the green crystals that you see in Superman's movie, and he talks to his father Jor-El, and it's Belushi doing his Brando impression.
Right.
And they even use some of the John Williams score from Superman the movie, which I was impressed by.
Yeah. This is a impressive bit of acting here. I really was like, oh wow, this is really interesting. And of course, Jor-El talks to him about he's been, as he hears this, he will have been dead for many centuries, but he'll be reborn as Charlie Rich, which I didn't quite understand that reference.
Yeah, I think that's a topical reference. I wasn't quite getting that, and I didn't look up Charlie Rich. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay, all right, I'll look that up in a bit.
I'm sure it was hilarious in 1979. And then he also talks to his Earth father, Pa Kent, who's played by Bill Murray, who's talking about how, we found you in the Black Forest, we raised you as your own, we taught you how to battle at Versailles, how Jews are parasites, and how Germany will one day bring order to the world.
And it says, son, don't ever lift those Volkswagens up by the bumper. They come right off in your hand.
Right. So, Klaus Kent is now sufficiently motivated. He decides to reveal himself as Uberman, and he like comes out of the janitor closet and he rips off his shirt, and Aykroyd's pants don't quite come off the way they're
supposed. That was hilarious.
He comes out, so he's just a guy in a Superman shirt and then like suit pants, and then he like takes them off later after he throws himself on top of the bomb.
Yeah, and that gets a big pop from the audience.
Yeah. And he declares that he's fighting for untruth, injustice, and the Nazi way. And
Jesus.
he also says like, "Oh, and I have X-ray vision." And Lois Lanehawk goes, "Oh, you can see through my clothes." And he says, "Yes, and his too." And then he points at Jimmy Olstein and says, "He's a Jew."
Jesus Christ.
And Franken's immediately like, "No, my parents were just really into hygiene." And then the sketch ends with Superman grabbing Jimmy, flying out the window, and he's like hauling him off to a concentration camp.
Mother of... Wow.
This sketch goes dark.
It goes hard.
It might be the only comedy sketch that ends with one of the characters being hauled off to a concentration camp. I'm guessing.
And then then it cuts to newspaper headlines saying Uberman takes Stalingrad in 5 minutes.
Right.
Uberman rounds up 2 million Jews, and then
he like more than 6 million.
And then he kills every person he kills every person in England. U.S. is next.
Yeah.
Good God.
And then it cuts back to the talk show format, and they're like, "Well, that looked pretty grim." And then the general, played by Garrett Morris, starts talking about how, well, don't forget that Superman's vulnerable to kryptonite, so we would have like put all our resources into developing a kryptonite bomb to defeat him. And then Gilda Radner points out that with nobody in England, then the Jews probably would have settled there, and that would have become the new Holy Land.
Oh, wow!
Wow!
Oh my God! This is we're coming in hot for the first sketch here, folks.
It's something else. It's a very funny sketch. It's a very dark and edgy sketch. It's tough for me to see SNL doing something like that today.
There's absolutely no way they would do anything like this today. This just has this is fraught with way too much edgy material for them to even come close to it. But it is a genuinely funny sketch.
It's such a huge laugh from the audience when he's like, "Yes, and I have X-ray vision. He's a Jew."
That line, like, wow.
That was great.
Holy Toledo.
Very, very funny. Just funny writing, funny performances. It's got a funny live TV screw up when, Aykroyd's having trouble with his pants.
Right.
Yeah. I really like this one.
This was a good one. Yeah. It's on Peacock right now. Watch it and just see. Wow. Just buckle up and prepare just be ready.
Let your mouth be agape.
Yes. That's
right. So just a couple months later, in March of 1979, Margot Kidder was hosting the show, who played Lois Lane in the Superman movies, of course. And so they did a sketch called Superhero Party with Bill Murray as Superman, and he's married to Lois Lane. And we find out later on in the sketch that apparently like everybody in the Justice League has defeated all the supervillains, so they have nothing to do.
Yeah, just to hang out and go to parties.
Right.
I did like how so in this one, like Lois and Clark are Lois and Superman, because Lois still doesn't know Superman's ultimate is Clark Kent.
Right.
So they're a married couple, and then the doorbell rings. I did like how Bill Murray kind of leaps towards the door to answer.
Yeah, that was a nice touch. And it's the Flash, played by Dan Aykroyd, and his girlfriend is Gilda Radner, and he introduces her as Beverly. And the comic book geek in me immediately went, "Oh, it's not Iris?" Because like the Flash's wife in the comics was Iris West, later Iris Allen. But then I remembered this was 1979. This is actually, as it so happens in the comics, they killed off Iris Allen just about a month after the sketch aired.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that was in Flash number 275. And she, they'd been married in the comics for, I think, about 10 years, and they were trying to shake up the book. So they decided to kill off his wife. And, that was a big event in the Flash comics. So I thought it was interesting because, obviously the people who wrote the sketch knew comic books. Because you don't pull out Ant-Man or have these comic accurate costumes without knowing that.
Yeah,
so I was kind of surprised that it stopped there, that nobody knew or cared that his wife's name was Iris.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, because I know Ant-Man even back then was probably like a deep cut character.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. Like now everybody knew
absolutely,
about
absolutely.
Ant-Man.
And Garrett Morris plays Ant-Man, and he's, you know, they paint him as not terribly impressive because he's like, oh, he shrinks to the size of the ant, but he has the strength of a human. And
Like,
when they did the Ant-Man movie like 10 years ago, they gave Garrett Morris a cameo.
yay!
um, but
yeah,
yeah,
so,
we go ahead.
no, I was gonna say yeah. So we have the Flash and Beverly. The Flash gives them a housewarming gift, and of course, because Superman has X-ray vision, he automatically knows it's a corkscrew. And
Right.
if Lois gets a noise, like, can we just pretend that we don't know what it is and just open it first?
Yeah. Not all of us have X-ray vision.
Yeah. Then Jane Curtin comes in as Lana Lang.
Right, Lana Lang, who in the comics is basically Superman's or Superboy's teenage girlfriend. She was like Clark Kent's next door neighbor, and so she was like sort of the equivalent of Lois Lane in the Superboy stories. She was always like trying to figure out the secret identity and stuff. And later in the 70s, they brought her back in the Superman books, and she was co-anchor of the evening news with Clark Kent. When Clark Kent was a news journalist.
Ooh, I did not know that.
A television anchorman.
Ooh, so, anchorman.
Yeah, and they brought in Lana Lang because like women started to anchor the news and stuff. Like Barbara Walters with I forget who it was, but like one of the 60 Minutes guys or something.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, and Jane Curtin plays Lana Lang as a bit of a bitchy rival to Lois.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, how's being married to Superman? Must be incredible, right?
Yeah, she's the one you got to watch out after because she's after your man.
Yeah.
Your Superman.
And, next we have a brilliant bit of casting. Probably one of the reasons this sketch is so finely remembered today. We have John Belushi coming in as the Hulk.
I mean, do you get any more better casting than that?
I mean, that's pretty terrific.
It's the role he was born to play, baby.
Yeah, and Lorraine Newman is his girlfriend Cookie, who has no comics equivalent, but she comes in casts and crutches because she's the Hulk's girlfriend. Need I say more?
Yeah, I think she says like, I swear we're getting twin beds.
Yeah,
so it's like that lets you know how she got all hurt up because
yeah. And then moments later, more guests come in. They say the Invisible Girl. They don't have anybody. They just act like somebody's there. Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, the Thing, which is the poor person in the Thing costume can barely fit through the door.
Yeah, that
sort of shimmy in sideways.
Yeah, that costume was. I mean, it's impressive, especially for a time. But like, yeah, the guy in it is just like pretty miserable because it did not look comfortable at all.
No. And I don't know if they made all these from scratch for the sketch. I assume they did, but it's really impressive. Yeah. And Garrett Morris comes in a pretty comics accurate Ant-Man costume.
Yeah. I did like how it's interesting how Garrett played him, just like kind of being kind of like has like a high pitched voice, like I'm Ant-Man. Why is Ant-Man making fun of me? I don't get it.
He's very soft spoken and he underplays it in a fun way. Yeah.
But this is it. Seeing all these costumes are pretty. It's like a DC Marvel crossover event over here.
Yeah. It's really cool and.
Then we get a few like little gags here and there, like the Hulk having to use the bathroom. He goes in, you hear a woman screaming, and you realize, oh, Sue Storm was in there, and of course, the Hulk didn't see her because she's invisible. Yeah.
And then when he comes out later, everyone's like, oh, God, what, did somebody die in there? And he's like, hey, it's not going to smell like roses. And at one point, Lois says, oh, we need more ice. So Superman goes out to get the ice. And then he takes the opportunity to come back in as Clark Kent.
Right, because she was asking, hey, where's Clark? I haven't seen him yet.
Right. And so Bill Murray comes in as Clark Kent. And by the way, I like that they gave Superman a slight blue tint to his hair.
Yes, very nice.
That was a nice touch. Because like in comics, comics used to have like very limited coloring methods. So for the highlights for black hair, they'd use blue. So some people are like, oh, that means Superman has blue hair. And it's like, no, it's just a limited color palette.
But yeah, comic accuracy.
Yes, but he he talks to Lois and he's like, well, hey, it must be pretty great being married to Superman, right? I mean, that's got to be a dream come true. And she's like, well, not really, because I can't tell you how boring he is.
Yeah.
And then she's like, can you believe that, like, when we got married, he was still a virgin?
Yeah,
Like,
and then that's
oh,
when Clark
well,
is like, "Yeah, you were a virgin too, right?" And she's like, "No, I was. I mean, I went out with the Hulk for 6 months, man. Come on." And that,
yeah,
yeah, Hulk
yeah.
got in there. Hulk smashed.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
And he finds that really demoralizing, and he's like, Clark excuses himself quickly, and then he comes back later, and he just flies back in as Clark.
Yeah.
He's so distraught that he doesn't care about his secret edit anymore. And he comes in with a bag of ice. He just like kind of tosses it on the table, and he's like, "All right, everybody out, get out, get out."
Party's over, get out.
Yeah. It's a cute sketch. It's a funny sketch,
Yeah, this was a cute one. I mean, I like the little sort of side tangents it takes with the bathroom and the thing with Clark and Lois. Yeah, overall, I thought this was a pretty decent sketch. It's a long sketch though, too. It's like almost 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's 10 minutes. So it's. I mean, we gotta. Bill Murray's got to do that costume change into Clark Kent over the Superman outfit.
Yeah.
Can't see how he'd have time to do anything else. And I'd kind of remembered it as him changing back to Superman later, but no, he just comes back as Clark Kent. So
yeah, I mean, I guess like the time it would take to get out of that costume would be a little too much. So they're like, you know what? Just have them in the same costume, and then just everybody realizing they're the same person, and let's just end it that way.
Yeah, and it works. It works.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to Superman auditions.
Superman auditions. This is from when Christopher Reeve hosted in April of 1985.
Right.
And should I be saying who the musical guests are too? Because that's kind of a fun glimpse into
Yeah, sure. Why not?
So this is from a Christopher Reeve Santana episode. This is season 10, episode 16, aired April 10th, 1985.
Right. The Michael Palin one, musical guest was the Doobie Brothers.
Yeah.
And then Margot Kidder, musical guest was the Chieftains.
Yeah, I think that was like an Irish folk group or something like that.
I believe so.
I don't know much about them, but
yeah, but interesting musical guest. But yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see who they pair up.
Yeah.
So this one, Christopher Reeve hosting in 85. So this is after he's done all the Superman movies. Oh, well, no, wait. Actually, Superman 4 was 87. So he'd done the first 3 by this point.
Right. Yeah. And now this sketch is the one I remember, because I remember seeing this one like in reruns on Comedy Central or VH1 or whatnot. So this one, I was like, oh yeah, I remember really liking this one. So I was looking forward to seeing it again, and yeah, it still holds up.
Yeah, we got Jim Belushi playing Richard Donner, who was the director of the first Superman movie from 1978. And he's on the phone, and he mentions the Salkind brothers. I'm like, oh, well, that's not quite right, because the Salkinds were a father and son team. But, I guess somebody just saw the names and assumed they were brothers.
Okay.
And a graphic says, final auditions for Superman, January 1977. And so Jim Belushi is playing Richard Donner, and Julie Louis-Dreyfus is playing the casting assistant, and she's doing great work there. She's got like a nice New York accent.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like Janine from Ghostbusters a little bit.
Yeah, she's doing a lot more in the part than she has to. And she seems like every inch of the board assistant.
Yes, very much so.
And they bring in the final 3 actors. We got Christopher Reeve playing himself. We got Rich Hall, and we've got Gary Kroger, who's playing like this method actor type.
Yes.
And we talked about this sketch a bit with Gary when he was on the podcast. And I think that's a favorite of his too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, because I mean, if you watch the sketch, like his part isn't a huge part, but he definitely does a lot with it.
Yeah,
like,
he makes the most of it.
Yeah, like you definitely get a good sense of his character in the few lines he does have. You can tell like he's kind of this overly serious, dramatic actor that's also trying to, schmooze his way up into the role. Like, like he's the type of guy that as soon as he gets there, he like compliments the director. It's like, oh, I'm a huge fan of your work. I love everything you do. And like he laughs a little too hard at like
Right.
a quick little small joke that Richard
And then when
Donner
he
made.
gets to read, he's very hammy and just overly dramatic. He's taking all these pauses, and he's like going off to the other side of the room, and like he's making a meal out of the lines.
Yeah. And then when he finishes and he feels like he nails it, he goes, yes. I was like, all right, Kroger. I see what you're doing there.
Great performance by Kroger there. And then Rich Hall, the guy he's playing, he's maybe not as good of an actor as the other two, but he's very impressive stunt-wise, because one of the tests is, okay, now we're doing the scene where you catch a bullet in your teeth, and they actually fire a gun at the various actors.
Yeah, like it's because with the sketch, it takes a while to see what the joke is, see what the turn is. But then once you see that, when at first it shows them rehearsing the lines, and they all do okay, except for I got to remember to call him Rich Hall and not Rich Little, because I used to do that all the time back in the day. I don't know why. But like you see them going over.
Well, it's also confusing because like Brad Hall was on SNL around the same time too.
Just so many Halls, so many Riches.
Yeah, and then Anthony Michael Hall a year or two later. So,
oops, all Hall.
SNL, oops, all Halls edition.
But so once you see them going over the lines, you're like, all right, that's kind of funny. But then you see the turn where they're, like you said, like they're rehearsing the scene where Superman catches a bullet in his teeth. And it's actually Richard Donner actually shooting a gun at these actors, and they have to catch it in their teeth. And then you see Christopher Reeve do it for the first time, then he messes up. And he says, oh, the bullet flew off my teeth and it broke a window. But
it bounced off my teeth. I'm so sorry. I've been practicing with my roommate all day.
I can do it. And then he does it again, and it bounced off his chin, and he apologizes. Like, no, I can do this. I'm just sorry. I'm just nervous.
Yeah, and he's like, okay, we'll come back to you, Christopher. And then they do it with Rich Hall, and he like, turns his head, and then he turns around, and then he opens his mouth, and he's got a bullet in his mouth, and so he caught it perfectly. Right. And then they go to the third actor, they go to Kroger, and they just shoot him dead. And it's hilarious because Kroger does a great pratfall. He flies back, he knocks over a chair. It's incredible, and he really elevates it up. And then and then after he's dead, they're like, "Okay, we've narrowed it down to you two."
Yeah, Kroger does a really good fall back into a bunch of chairs and stuff. I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty impressive."
It's like Molly Shannon, Mary Catherine Gallagher good.
Yeah. So then the auditions go on with Kroger's dead body. It's just lying there for the rest of the sketch.
They literally ignore him for the rest of the sketch. I mean,
yep.
And so Christopher Reeve goes on to the next test. He's like squeezing a lump of coal into a diamond, and he's nervous, and he basically crushes the lump of coal. And then Rich, he's like, oh well, here, let me show you how. You got to do even pressure, and then he pulls out this huge diamond. And then they do a thing where they're supposed to set Lex Luthor's phone on fire. And so they say zap that phone on the wall with your heat vision. And Christopher Reeve screws it up, and he accidentally sets the curtains on fire.
Yeah, then everybody's freaking out. Then Rich Hall said, no, I got it. And then with it, he blows the fire out with his breath, and then the curtain just kind of flies out the window. And he saves the day.
Honestly, I'm impressed that they do a live fire gag on a live television show. That's
now that I look
really risky, man.
It really is. It was actual fire. It wasn't
I'm so impressed they pulled that off.
Yeah, but I guess when I saw it, back in the day, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But now that I'm older and I look at it, oh, well, no, that is really risky to do. But they pulled it off.
That could have gone wrong in so many ways.
Studio 8H could have been engulfed in flames. And then Lauren had to have, could only rescue John Lovitz.
Yeah. Nice reference. I'm sure they had some people standing off stage, with fire extinguishers at the ready or something. I mean, I think you can't have live fire on a set without having some sort of firefighter there to supervise that everything's safe and on the up and up. But
Yeah,
I
you
was
gotta
just
have
like, wow.
you gotta have somebody there with like a hose or super soaker or something.
Yeah, yeah. And so of course they go with Rich Hall for the part of Superman, and they're like, okay, well, shooting starts next week, and he's like, oh no, I can't do that. I got a call back on a Dial soap commercial. and
I mean, that's
and
big money.
and he's like, oh, you can't get out of that? And he's like, oh no, I'm sorry. And they're like, okay, well, we'll go with Reeve.
And they go with Christopher Reeve, and like they practice
Yeah.
the bullet, the bullet off, catching the bullet with his teeth thing, and of course he
Yeah,
keeps
yeah,
missing
and he's
and
like,
missing.
"Oh no, sorry, I'll get it right." No, oh, sorry, I'll get it right. And it, and part of the reason this sketch works so well is Reeve could play Ernest so well. I mean, it worked for his Clark Kent impression, or his Clark Kent portrayal, I should say.
Right.
But he plays like the young Ernest. Oh gosh, sir, I'll do my best, by golly. And and he brings some of that to playing himself as a struggling young actor, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I think it's a funny sketch as written, but the performances really kick it up a notch.
Yeah, for sure. This was this is a memorable one. It's definitely one of my favorites out of all the sketches we're going to talk about. Tonight.
Yeah, it's up there for me too.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Our next one is called Krypton Survives. This is from season 12, episode 4, from November 15th, 1986, with host Sam Kinison and Lou Reed. Maybe should we explain a little about who Sam Kinison is? Because some of our younger listeners might not remember him, because he died late 80s, I think, or early 90s.
Yeah, like I feel like he's a comedian that like maybe gotten a little forgotten in time. I mean, he definitely has his huge fans out there now, but they're all older. But yeah, I definitely don't think younger fans would know who he is.
I think Gen X and up know who he is, but okay, he was a stand-up comedian. He used to be a preacher, and then he left the church and became a stand-up, and I think his big breakout was on like Rodney Dangerfield's Young Comedians special. And that was where I first saw him, and he screamed a lot in his act.
Like he kind of had a lot of that sort of like male rage energy. Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, you could maybe compare him to like Andrew Dice Clay or something like that. But like at the time, there was like a few of those comics that were like, oh, women will ruin you, and I'm in hell. Life is like a lot of that.
Right. Yeah. So, and he also I remember he had a very funny routine on that Young Comedian special about like, there were commercials for like feed the hungry kids of Ethiopia. And, I look at that and I just think, oh, that's so cruel. What, somebody on the crew could get that kid a sandwich or something.
Yeah. A sandwich.
You see what this is? This is sand. You know what it's going to be in 1,000 years? It's going to be sand. Nothing grows out here. We don't lose your time if you went to where the food is.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was outrageous. He was funny. He was, occasionally profane. He did a cover of the song "Wild Thing" with Jessica Hahn in the video.
Yeah, there was like, I mean,
I looked that up this morning. I was like, that was a real thing, right? I didn't just imagine that.
No, it was because, like, I mean, he started off, like I said, like a comedian and became huge. But then because he was living this big, lavish lifestyle and almost like he sort of crossed over into being like a rock star.
He kind of did, yeah.
Lifestyle.
And he had a lot of drug and alcohol problems.
Yeah, and like he kind of crossed over to the point where if he was living this rock star life, maybe I guess he thought maybe I could be a rock and roll star. And like you said, like then he did the Wild Thing cover. Like
I watched the video this morning, and it's like Billy Idol's in it, Sebastian Bach is in it, Slash is in it, John Bon Jovi and Rodney Dangerfield are in it at the beginning, and most of it is just him riding around in a ring with Jessica Hahn, who was his girlfriend at the time.
Nice work if you can get it.
Yeah. And he died pretty young. He was like hit by a semi or something like that.
He got hit by a truck on the road or something like that.
Yeah.
Let me see when I can find out how.
And I think he was sober at the time.
Yeah, that's the ironic thing
because he was somebody you honestly would not have been surprised to hear that he had OD'd.
Yeah, because like so many people, I mean, Mark Maron has stories about him.
Hmm.
Yeah, he was just like constantly just like coked up and drunk, and like people thought,
Yeah.
oh, that's how he's gonna go. But then he got, in a horrible car accident. Yeah, so he died at 38
Wow.
in 1992.
Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah,
Too young, because it would have been very interesting to see how he developed as a stand-up as the years went on. Um,
yeah, for sure.
but anyway, okay, so he hosted SNL in '86. This is probably around the height of his fame.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I managed to find this sketch on Vimeo. Again, we got the John Williams music. We're on Krypton, and it's the white crystal Krypton of Superman the movie. Um, Sam Kinison is playing Jor-El. Nora Dunn is playing Superman's mother, Lara.
Mhm.
Although Kinison is obviously not a comic book fan because he says uh, KL and Laura.
Yeah, I did notice that he like mispronounces all these names.
Yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, he's not a comic book guy because
No.
he has no idea how those names are said.
Yeah.
That amused me. And so, like, the premise is that, Jor-El was a little off in his calculations that Krypton was going to explode. And so, like, after they send off the rocket, um, the earthquake stops and everything's okay on Krypton. And
Yeah, I mean, it's a decent premise. I did like how,
Mhm.
like when they send off, Kal-El and
Uh-huh.
that little dome. The dome kind of awkwardly comes down, and it doesn't quite
Yeah.
land. It's a little,
No, it gets caught on something and it comes down crooked. And I was half expecting Sam Kinison or somebody to like put it right, but no, they just let it go up and it's
just haphazardly laying
yeah,
on top of the bassinet,
live TV.
and
And
then yeah,
so after they send off the rocket, Dana Carvey and Victoria Jackson come in as another couple, and they're like, "Oh, hey, Jor-El, we took your advice and we sent all five of our kids off on a rocket, and we took poison." So we don't have to stay and see our planet die.
yeah, and then Jarrell's like, oh yeah, just well, you can just go, and nothing more to do, just wait for death, goodbye. And
Yeah.
it's just Jarrell being embarrassed that his calculations were
Hmm.
off, and his wife looking at him and like looking at his calculations, like, all right, this you should have let
Yeah.
me check this. All right, what's 9 times 7? And he says, well,
And he's
what
like,
do I have
"Well, what
there?
did I put there?"
You
Yeah.
know. And then he kind of goes off into like Ralph Cramden territory, where he's like,
Yeah.
all right, oh, it is all my fault. I'm the only one that screws up. What about the time you locked us out of the house?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it goes into like kind of basic Kinnison type stuff because I don't think he was that great of an actor, honestly.
No, there's a couple
Um,
times where it seems like he riffs a few lines here and there.
yeah, he did. He did. Like there was a bit where he answers a phone and then the phone is ringing after he answered it, and he's like, "I got it." And
Yeah, because stop ringing. Oh, there was like one point after the bassinet with Kal-El
Mhm.
goes off, and like it looks like the planet's about to explode, and he says to his wife, "Hey, we have time to squirt one off if you want."
Yeah,
I was like, ah,
yeah. And then after this, the sketch cuts to 30 years later in Metropolis. We got Superman fully grown as an adult. Phil Hartman as Superman. I was not expecting to see that.
that was a
Um,
shocker.
yeah, and then he talks with his father as a hologram, and Jor-El tells Superman that a meteor is about to hit Metropolis, and
Right.
Superman's like, "Well, I just checked with my supervision, and I'm not seeing anything. Are you sure about that?" And it turns out the meteor is actually going for Paris.
Yeah, so the meteor
So
hits in Paris.
yeah,
Oh,
so
oops.
yeah, so I don't know. I like the premise of this sketch, but I didn't find it especially funny.
Yeah, the premise is interesting. Like, what if Jor-El was off on his calculations?
Hmm.
But yeah, it does get a little sloppy here and there. Um, it's cool to see A. Whitney Brown as a thug. That Superman already.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, him playing a bit part. And there is actually a famous Superman story in the comics where it's Krypton survived, and like Jor-El was actually wrong about it being about to explode. And
Mm,
it's a story by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, who later did the comic Watchmen, and it's called "For the Man Who Has Everything." And
Oh,
it's got Batman and Wonder Woman and Robin. They all visit Superman on his birthday at the Fortress of Solitude, and they discover that he's like under the spell of this alien plant called the Black Mercy, and it gives him this fantasy life of what if Krypton never exploded.
oh wow.
Uh, but the fantasy is kind of slowly turning bad
Hmm.
because like Superman's trying to resist this, and so Jor-El has become like this old and bitter guy because he was wrong about Krypton exploding, and he basically joins like Krypton's alt right.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Wow.
and he's like speaking out against immigrants and stuff like that, and it's a great story. They've
God.
adapted it. They adapted it into the Justice League Unlimited cartoon,
Listen to
and
Joe Rogan and
yeah, and this the Supergirl TV show did a loose adaptation of it too.
holy moly.
So yeah, so that's interesting, and
Oh,
but this would have been only I guess about a year or so after that comic came out because that came out in like '85 sometime I think.
oh wow. That
So
does sound interesting. Shit. We
yeah,
have to
yeah,
check in on that. Holy Toledo.
great comic. I highly recommend it.
Yeah,
So
but this sketch, interesting premise, but yeah, the execution was a little wonky.
yeah, just not especially funny.
Yeah.
So a little disappointing.
All right. Let's talk about young Superboy.
Yes, Young Superboy. This is from when Macaulay Culkin hosted with musical guest Tin Machine, which was David Bowie's band at the time. This
Wow.
is from November 23rd, 1991, season 17, episode 7.
Right. Now this is the sketch that you could only find on TikTok. And kudos to you,
Yes.
sir, for tracking this one down because yeah, this one's kind of gotten lost to time a little bit.
Yeah, I think I just had to search for like Young Superboy Macaulay Culkin and leave SNL out of it. So I found it on TikTok. So we watched this. It's on the like the vertical phone orientation instead of the widescreen. So the sketch is like kind of cut off on the sides. Not really doing the sketch justice,
Not really.
but it talks about how he's young Superboy and he's here to fight for truth, justice, and then he's secretly Clark Kent, who someday hopes to work for the Daily Planet, but that decision is a long ways off.
Right. He can change the course of mighty rivers and squeeze through narrow openings.
Yeah,
And I did like
and
how like when he does the pose thing,
mhm.
I kind of for some reason like some dog walks up and sniffs him a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal was with
What
that.
was that about?
I don't know. Was like the family dog there, and
Yeah, was that like crypto? Did a loose dog get
I don't know. It's so weird.
did a stray get onto Studio 80 on the main stage?
So anyway, we got Phil Hartman as Lex Luthor. He's robbing a bank with his henchmen Dana Carvey and Chris Farley, and then Macaulay Culkin comes in as young Superboy, and he's like, "Oh, stop right there, Luthor!" And then everyone just starts talking about how adorable he is.
Yeah, I did like the little dialogue Phil and had with the henchman before he comes in, where one of the henchmen is like, "Well, what about Superman, boss?" And then Lex is like, "Well, don't worry. I have a feeling he won't be bothering us anymore." And of
Yeah,
course, then the other henchman's like saying, "Well, what makes you say that?" It's like, I don't know. It's just a feeling. I mean, I could be wrong. Oh, geez, we better hurry here.
yeah.
I don't know why that made me chuckle so much.
Well, just how Phil Hartman plays it. I mean,
Yeah.
he's great.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kevin Nealon comes in as the regular Superman,
Right.
which was weird to me because I was like, wait, but young Superboy, they said he was Clark Kent. So is this not taking place in the past, or
Did they say he was Clark Kent or he was like another Kent or something?
I could have sworn they said he was Clark Kent. Maybe I should go back and rewatch it, but I could have sworn they said Clark Kent.
I think he's supposed to be like another. I mean, there's a young Superboy in the comics, right?
Superman does have a son now in the comics. Yeah.
Okay.
And oh gosh, I'm blanking on the kid's name. I think his name is Joel.
Oh, okay.
Like sort of named after Jor-El. Or no, wait, it's John Kent. I think.
Oh.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right. Cool. But this isn't from like the old comic books. Like Superman never had a son up until like recently.
Well, I mean, what they used to do in like the 50s and 60s was they had these things called imaginary stories, where they were like, hey, we're gonna tell, and it's basically they were telling stories out of continuity.
Oh, like
you know,
What
and
If or something like
yeah, it was like DC's version of What If, but before What If was a thing.
that. Okay.
And then like DC later on, they did a series of one shots called Elseworlds, which was a similar sort of thing, just kind of like, you know, what if Batman debuted 100 years sooner and he fought Jack the Ripper? Um, so yeah, so they do stories like, you know, they did one where Superman married Lois Lane. They did one where Superman is finally killed by Lex Luthor. They did one called Superman Red, Superman Blue, where Superman splits himself into two different people so he can do all the deeds that he can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And one ends up marrying Lois Lane, one ends up marrying Lana Lang. And
Okay.
yeah, so that was a whole thing for a while. But yeah, I don't know. I was just a little weirded out because this sketch had both the young Superboy and Superman together, and it didn't. I was half expecting it to be like, oh, Superman was de-aged by some scientific device of Lex Luthor, or it's just, you know, he's young and he's not Superman yet. But they had him with the adult Superman, and I thought that was a little odd to me. It
Yeah,
threw
I
me
mean,
out of the sketch a bit.
no, I hear you. Yeah, I just thought he was like Superman's son or nephew or something like that. I just like, all right, I guess that's the premise. And like, you know, of course,
I think maybe he was supposed to be, but yeah.
yeah, and yeah. So basically, then the henchman and talk to Superman. He's like, oh, it's Superboy, he's adorable. Were you adorable like that? And then Superman's like, no, I was kind of a heavy kid. I had a large ass.
Yeah. So, you know, not one of my favorites. I don't remember the Macaulay Culkin show being that good because I think there was just only so much they could do with a host that was that young at the time.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, there was a couple episodes where they had a super young host that were actually pretty good. Like if I remember, the Fred Savage one was actually pretty legit.
Yeah.
If I recall, but yeah, this one they didn't have much to do. Like I remember they had like a sort of a Home Alone type of homage in the cold open that I thought was pretty good, where the cast leaves Macaulay alone in Studio 80.
Yeah.
I remember that one being pretty funny.
And I did, when I was checking Peacock to see if this sketch was on the Macaulay Culkin episode, I did see the Good Nights, and you see like a very young Kieran Culkin.
Yes.
At Good Nights, and the cast is like hoisting both Macaulay and Kieran up on their shoulders.
Yes, which I believe Kieran mentions when he hosted the show not too long ago.
Yeah, he showed a clip of that, as I recall. So
yeah, I think neat. Yeah, you can even see Kieran. I think Kieran was actually in a sketch or two. Like I remember him being in the Superfans sketch. If I'm not mistaken.
And he was probably one of the other kids in because he played, like Macaulay Culkin played the young, what was the name guy?
Oh, Rich Meister.
Yeah.
Making copies.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought this was just kind of a so-so sketch.
Honestly. Yeah, same. It's like one of those things where it's like, oh, so the whole premise is that everybody finds young Superboy adorable and nobody takes him seriously, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, they don't really take it any further than that. So
yeah, I thought it was okay enough. Superman on the Lenny Wise show. Let's go to that.
Yeah, this is from when Jerry Seinfeld hosted. Annie Lennox was the musical guest. And this is also from season 17, episode 18, aired April 18th, 1992. So it's just basically Jerry Seinfeld as Superman. He's on a radio talk show with Phil Hartman as the host, Lenny Wise. I don't think Lenny Wise was a real radio host, was he?
I don't believe so. I think they just made that up.
I've never heard of him, so. So it's just it's a very Seinfeldian type of sketch.
Very much so.
I feel like Seinfeld definitely had a hand in writing this because he's a big Superman fan. He had like a lot of Superman references on his show Seinfeld over the years, and he did those commercials for, I think it was American Express.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember those.
Animated Superman.
Yeah, I remember those.
That was voiced by the guy who played Putty, Patrick Warburton.
Yes.
So yeah, a lot of Seinfeldian type questions. You know, he's like, So what about kryptonite? Does it bug you? Are you constantly worried about running into it? And Jerry Seinfeld's like, no, well, I don't really think about it. There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. How much kryptonite do you think is out there?
I honestly don't know.
Does it bother you that you can't see through lead?
No, I'm pretty used to it at this point. And at one point he says like, oh, so you stopped aging when you were what, like 30? And without that, you'd be about 50 now. And Seinfeld's like, yeah, that's about right.
They're taking some calls. This guy, Al McKay from Smallville, called. He lived 3 houses down from Lex.
Now this was interesting because they said it was Smallville, Indiana. And Smallville traditionally in the comics is Kansas. But that took a while to develop. I found this out when I was writing that article about the Superman the movie's influence on the comics.
Right.
Because the movie depicted Smallville as being in Kansas. And actually that What If Superman Grew Up in Germany sketch from 1979 also says that Smallville was in Kansas. And those were like the earliest references to it being in Kansas that I could find.
Right.
So I found it really interesting because by this point in the comics, it was firmly established as being in Kansas. So I thought it was very interesting that they went with Indiana.
Yeah, that's that. Oh, I didn't even realize that.
But I feel like maybe Seinfeld wasn't as up on, what was currently going on with Superman. He wrote it more like the Superman comics he remembered from back in the day.
So he's a fake fan. Is that what you're trying to say?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. No, I'm just saying he probably wasn't up on all the ins and outs of the current Superman. And actually, there's another example that the caller from Smallville, he asked about Lex Luthor's origin. And Superman says, well, I accidentally set Luthor's lab on fire and and that's how he lost his hair and he never forgave me for it. And I'm like, that's close to being right. I feel like that was how Seinfeld remembered the story. And it's not wrong, but they had a story that was like Luthor's origin back in the day where they were like young Lex Luthor was Superboy's biggest fan. And he saves Superboy's life because Superboy's coming in for a landing and then a kryptonite meteor lands right next to him. And young Lex Luthor is doing some work on his farm and he uses his tractor. What is that thing? It's got the big scoop in the front.
Satellite dish?
No, one of those trucks.
Oh, like a snowplow or something?
Yeah, it's like a snowplow, and he hauls it out of the way of Superboy and saves Superboy's life. And Superboy's like, hey, I'm going to pay you back for this. I'm going to build you this big super lab because you're a young scientist and that. And then Luthor's like, oh, well, Superboy's so great. I'm going to discover a cure for kryptonite. And so he discovers a cure for kryptonite. And in another one of his experiments, he creates some sort of alien life, like some sort of protoplasm or something like that.
Right.
And he's so happy about these discoveries, he's celebrating and he accidentally knocks over a beaker. And so he sets his own lab on fire.
Oh.
Superboy comes over, blows out the fire, but because it's like a chemical fire, he blows some of those chemicals onto Lex's head, and that's what causes him to lose his hair.
Oh, interesting. It's almost like how Dr. Doom got his face all scarred and
kind of similar, yeah, because it's the hubris.
Yes. Big words.
And so Luthor's like, you did this intentionally because you're jealous of me. I'll never forgive you. I'm your biggest enemy now, and I'm gonna try to kill you.
Dun dun dun.
So that was the Silver Age origin of Luthor. So that's what Seinfeld is referencing here.
Oh, bulldozer. Maybe it's bulldozer.
A bulldozer. Why did that word go out of my head? I remember hubris, but I don't remember bulldozer.
The mind is a funny thing.
It really is. It really is, especially when you never do any sort of manual labor.
Hear.
I'm dumb. I was a wimpy kid reading comic books indoors, so I don't know from bulldozers.
Bulldozer, schmoldozer, whatever.
But there's also some Seinfeldian questions like, oh, well, what do you like to do in your off time? It's like, oh, I like to play Scrabble.
In the costume?
Yeah, sometimes.
Aren't people intimidated though? They see you in a Superman costume playing Scrabble against you?
Well, not really. I mean, if you don't have the letters, you don't, if I just get all vowels, there's not a lot I can do.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And then they think yeah.
Yeah, and I like the last caller who's like, "Hey, why didn't you do anything during that big garbage strike?"
It's like, look, I'm not picking up garbage. I do what I
Yeah,
can. All right.
yeah. Which doesn't seem like a very Superman sentiment. It seems like more
Yeah.
of a Seinfeld sentiment. But
Yeah, very much so. And I
I was
think it
like,
ends with,
Superman would pick up the garbage.
yeah, Superman be like, yeah, it'll take you like a second.
Yeah.
Uh,
So this was
yeah,
amusing.
yeah, it was an amusing one. I liked how this one ends with Lenny Wise asking Superman, "Hey, there's been rumors that Iran is stockpiling kryptonite,"
Yeah.
and then Superman's like, "Look, can you give me a break with the kryptonite, man?
Yeah. Yeah. It was cute. It was cute. I mean, I'm
This
sure
is
they
cute."
wrote that just because Seinfeld's a big Superman fan,
Yeah,
and he doesn't look bad in the outfit. They give him a Superman wig with a spit curl and everything.
not too
Uh,
shabby, not too shabby.
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
I did not remember that one at all.
Mm,
So this one was pretty much new to me. So
nice.
it was interesting to see this one.
Okay. Uh,
So the
next
next
up,
one I definitely remember though. This is
yeah, this one,
this
this
is a
one,
big one.
yeah.
This is Superman's funeral. This is from when Sinbad hosted with musical guest Sade. This is from season 18, episode 7, November 21st, 1992. So
Yes.
less than a year later, we're doing another Superman sketch.
Damn. Because like this came out not too long after the big Death of Superman episode issue, comic book issue, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
in the comics. So yeah, the backstory on the death of Superman is really interesting because it became this huge media event, but it wasn't really planned that way. Um,
Yeah,
so
because like I remember like the local news, like the news talking about this one, like it was a big deal. Like
yeah.
NBC News was like, "Oh, this breaking news! That's
Mhm.
a Superman." I was like, "Wow,
Yeah, so yeah, the story broke. Okay, well, like a little backstory. Like in DC Comics, they revamped the Superman titles in like '86, and so it was like a new continuity, and they threw out all the old stories, and then they kind of rewrote it and just basically tried to modernize it and bring it a little up to date. And eventually, in the books, they had Lois Lane and Clark Kent start dating for real. And in Superman 50, issue 50 of the new series, they actually had Clark Kent and Lois Lane get engaged.
hmm,
And their plan was originally for Superman 75, they're going to get married.
right,
But then, right around this time, they sold a new TV series, which became Lois and Clark, which was all about, kind of like the romance between Lois Lane and Clark Kent, or Lois Lane and Superman, however you want to say it. And so they had, in the comics, they basically had to push their plans back because they wanted to coordinate with the TV show when the marriage actually happened.
okay."
So now they've got this Superman 75 coming up, and they're like, well, what the heck are we going to do for this issue? And the regular joke at the Superman editorial meetings when they were planning out the storylines was somebody would always go, let's kill him. And and they just decided this time around, well, let's take it seriously. What if we did kill him?
Oh,
And so they had this big storyline where there was this big monster who just kind of appeared out of nowhere called Doomsday, and he like defeated all the Justice League, and Superman finally puts a stop to the guy, but only at the cost of his own life.
wow.
And he dies like right in front of the Daily Planet. And then they went through this whole funeral thing, and all the heroes were like wearing black armbands in the DC universe. And
Mm.
then they had this whole storyline where like there were these 4 replacement Supermen, but we didn't know if any of them were the real guy come back to life somehow. And they got like a lot of mileage out of this, and this was like their highest sales.
Wow.
Um, and it just so happened that this story happened to come out on like a slow news day. So like the AP or regular news services just kind of picked it up and reported on it. And because a lot of non-comic fans, civilians as we sometimes call them, they didn't know really how comic books work. They thought this was for real. They thought,
Oh,
oh, Superman's really dead and they're going to stop publishing Superman comics.
oh dear. Okay, that's what I thought. I genuinely thought, hey,
Yeah, because that's generally how it was reported.
wow.
Where
Okay.
comic fans were just like kind of cynical about it. We were like, okay, yeah, how's he going to come back? Because we've seen a million stories where people who were presumed dead came back. And so like DC put out all these different editions. There were like polybagged editions. There were editions where they had their own little black armband that you could put on. There was a issue with a weeping Superman S on black. And, so it was like huge money. Like all the creators made lots of royalties. They were able to buy houses and stuff, and good for them.
Yes.
But but it's just because this happened to hit on a slow news day that this became such a huge thing. And so we get a sketch on SNL about Superman's funeral, because this is around the time that issue came out. And so we got Rob Schneider as Jimmy Olsen. We got Al Franken as Lex Luthor. He's moved on from playing Jimmy to playing Lex Luthor.
Yes. That's moving on up in the world.
That's a funky combo.
Absolutely.
And we've got like several superheroes filing into the funeral, and we got
a lot of
David Spade as Aquaman.
as David Spade as Aquaman. He brought shrimp. Yeah. A lot of elaborate costumes, like especially Hawkgirl and Hawkman.
Yeah, and that's that's pretty much what they were wearing in the comic at the time. They had like those sort of red undershirts, and like somebody must have gone and picked up some recent DC comics, because like Spade's Aquaman even has that sort of mullety hairstyle that Aquaman had in the comics at the time.
Yes.
And I'm like, somebody was looking at the current Aquaman series.
Business in the front, party in the back.
We got Adam Sandler as the Flash, surprisingly not wearing the exact same Flash outfit that Aykroyd wore.
Maybe they had to
or if it was, they revised it somehow.
Updated.
Because I thought like SNL usually saved all their costumes and recycled them where they could, but we have Tim Meadows as the John Stewart Green Lantern.
Yeah, I think at one point, Schneider accidentally called him Green Arrow at one point.
Yeah,
I didn't know if that was a mistake or not. Or
I don't know. I feel like it was a mistake, and then he caught himself, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just so broken up. I'm so distraught.
I'm grieving."
Yeah. But I feel like this has got to be the first live action depiction of Jon Stewart. Because they were probably just like, okay, we got to have somebody that the black cast members can play.
Who's black?
And again, like, comic accurate costume. That's what Jon Stewart was wearing at around that time.
Right. We have Julia Sweeney as Lois Lane saying, "Hey, is Clark here yet?" It's like, no, there's still no sign of him. How come he's not? Yeah. How can he miss this? Of course.
We have Luthor and Jimmy Olsen both working as ushers. and like Tim Meadows is like, "Luthor, what are you doing here?" And he's like, well, hey, I'm sorry. I'm glad the guy's dead. This should be a really good year for me.
I was like, all right, that's pretty funny.
One of the funniest lines in the sketch. We got Dana Carvey as Batman and Chris Rock as Robin.
Yeah, that... all right. It just looked a little odd, but all right.
Well, it's funny because Batman Returns, they were going to have Marlon Wayans play Robin.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I remember this story.
That was the original plan, and then they cut the character out of the screenplay. And like Marlon Wayans apparently would still get royalties or residuals for Batman Returns because he was contracted to be in the movie, even though he didn't end up in the movie at all. So He's like, yeah, I still get paid for that movie.
Nice. We also have Smigel as the Penguin.
I thought that was Robert Smigel. It's tough to recognize him without the facial hair.
I'm pretty sure that's Smigel.
I was like, who is that? That's got to be Smigel, right? And the joke is the Penguin's like, wah, wah, wah. And they're like, oh, is he laughing? And he's like, no, this is how I cry too. Wah, wah, wah. So a very Burgess Meredith Penguin.
We got the great Phil Hartman as Perry White.
Right. So let's review. He's played Superman, he's played Lex Luthor, and he's played Perry White. I think he's probably the only actor who's played all three parts.
He's the only man that could play all three parts.
That's right, damn it. Like really great Phil Hartman.
Yes.
And it's a very John Hamilton kind of Perry White where he's just like, he can't really say anything besides Great Caesar's Ghost.
Right. Great Caesar's
John
Ghost.
Hamilton. Yeah. John Hamilton, if you don't remember, is the guy who played Perry White on the Adventures of Superman with George Reeves. So, which helped popularize the Great Caesar's Ghost. And then we have our host Sinbad as Black Lightning, who's like a superhero from the 70s. And you'd think this was like just a character that they made up for the SNL sketch, but no, Black Lightning is a for real character, and that is a pretty accurate rendition of his original costume from the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, until Black Lightning got his own TV show on the CW, I was 100% positive this was like a character they made up just for this sketch.
Yeah. But no, Black Lightning's for real, and and the joke here is that nobody's heard of Black Lightning, and they think he's just trying to wrangle his way into the funeral. And we see him at the end of the sketch, and he's like stealing shrimp from the buffet.
The Man of Steel, Steal.
Oh, I see what you did there. I see what you did
foreshadowing. There. Put a pin in this, people.
And actually, a neat little sort of footnote to that is that Sinbad ended up striking up a friendship with the comic writer who created Black Lightning, Tony Isabella, who's now known as Jenny Blake. And I got to interview Jenny back when they were still Tony, and he's actually like gone to Sinbad concerts and and stuff, and so they've gotten in touch through this sketch, and they struck up a bit of a friendship. I think there was talk about Sinbad guest starring on the Black Lightning TV show, but I don't think that ever came to pass.
Oh wow!
But anyway, that's kind of neat, and it's nice that Jenny had a good sense of humor about it.
Yeah, for sure. I had no idea.
Yeah, and let's see, we got Tom Davis as Mr. Fantastic with like a outstretched arm, and then Chris Farley as the Hulk.
Of course,
again, killer casting.
I'm not sure who's playing Spider-Man. I know it's got to be a woman because you do see like a breasty area for this.
I didn't look that closely at Spider-Man.
Well, I
was a woman playing Spider-Man. I didn't realize
it looked like a woman just because it seemed like a womanly figure. I'm trying to figure out the nicest way to say this.
It looked like a woman in the costume.
Yes, there. Woo! All right, there we go. Yeah. We'll say that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's not controversial.
I just don't want to sound creepy, man.
Okay, I'll have to look again. I didn't realize that. But
I mean, the Spider-Man has no line, so it doesn't even matter. But,
So they just needed a warm body, I guess.
Exactly. But this is the scene that I remember because, devotees to this podcast will know, like, I was prone to say in the early episodes of this podcast, Hulk not good with words, and this is the sketch that comes from.
So let me get this straight. You stopped saying that?
I got to bring it back, man. I think after a while, it just becomes obvious that I'm not good with words. But now I have to bring back my killer catchphrase, Hulk not good with words.
Right. And it's a great performance by Farley because he comes out and he's that sort of monosyllabic Hulk. And then he puts on a pair of readers and then he's reading this beautiful eulogy. He's like, oh, Superman was the greatest man. And he's just wonderfully articulate. And Farley turns on a dime. It's great.
It's pretty great. And then it ends with Jimmy saying that the Legion of Doom is attacking the Metropolis Civic Arena. Harry White shouts "Great Caesar's Ghost," and then all the superheroes leave the funeral to fight the Legion of Doom. Let's do it for Superman.
Right. He's like, okay, who here can fly? Okay, great. Who here has super strength? Who can turn the world back on its axis? Okay.
Yeah, I think I saw like Ellen Cleghorn as Storm, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that's interesting. That's surprising they didn't give her any lines.
Because I was looking through the crowd to see other comic book characters. I'm pretty sure I saw like X-Men Storm in there.
That's interesting. I'm going to have to look at the sketch again to see if I can spot her. I wasn't looking at the crowd as deeply as I could have. I did notice that at the end of the Hulk speech, he smashes the podium and he says, "Nuff said," which was a catchphrase of Stan Lee's. And I was like, okay, yes, somebody's a major comic book fan who wrote this because you don't pull out "Nuff said" without knowing comics.
Nuff. Wow. I mean, I knew Excelsior. I didn't know "Nuff said."
Yeah, that was something he'd said. He'd write in the bullpen bulletin pages a lot. I think he was just like "Nuff said."
Okay, fair enough. And then it ends with a close up of Julia Sweeney as Lois Lane saying, "Oh, Clark, where are you?" And then it kind of cuts to, I guess the video becoming like a comic book page.
Yeah, they put it like a filter on it that makes her look kind of like an illustration, which is pretty impressive to do on a live show, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a fun sketch. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. This was a good one.
Yeah,
yeah. Next up, we got Where's Superman?
Where's Superman? Also known as the Daily Planet.
The Daily Planet / Where's Superman?
Yeah. This was from when Paul Reiser hosted, also with Annie Lennox as the musical guest. This is season 20, episode 15, March 18th, 1995.
This is a season 21, folks. So, yeah. If you know season 20, you kind of know what to expect with this one.
This was not a great time for the show.
No.
Was this one on Peacock? I think
this one was on
I did find this one on Peacock. Yes. Okay. Yes. So if you're very curious, you can find the Paul Reiser show from season 20 on Peacock.
But yeah, it's not the best representation of SNL, I'll say that.
No. Okay, so they explain here that Superman has been exposed to yellow kryptonite. Not a thing. There's green kryptonite, there's red kryptonite, there's blue kryptonite. There's not yellow kryptonite. I've never heard of yellow kryptonite. But I guess the implication is supposed to be that made him cowardly or something, because they say he's all holed up in his Fortress of Solitude and there's a giant meteor coming to Earth. Giant meteors coming to Earth are very big in the SNL sketches, I noticed.
This is the second giant meteor coming to Earth sketch we've talked about in this episode so far.
Right. I think there were at least 3 of these sketches where they talk about a meteor coming to Earth. It's like, okay, we need some minutes for Superman to stop. What's happening? Giant meteor coming to Earth. Okay.
Perfect.
So we got Michael McKean as Perry White. We got David Spade as Jimmy Olsen. Pretty good casting. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Olsen's on the phone with Superman. We got Molly Shannon as Lois Lane.
Yeah, like this is like one of those episodes where like the old cast and the newer cast are kind of merging because like Molly Shannon and David Spade were on the same cast at one point.
That's wild. For like a hot minute. Yeah. Because Spade stayed on he was like one of the few cast members who wasn't let go in the purge around 1995. So, and yeah, so like Superman's depressed. We never see Superman in the sketch. It's just Jimmy on the phone with him and explaining what's going on. And there's a meteor coming, so they have to gather these other superheroes to try and stop the meteor. And Chris Farley comes in as Boomerang.
Paul Reiser comes in as the Night Stalker.
Right. And he's got like this super deep voice. I don't know if they're like electronically altering his voice or if he's just putting that on. But
I think like they were electronically doing it, and then like after he kind of breaks character like later on in the sketch where they just
he speaks in his natural voice. Yeah.
They got Norm comes in as Armor Man.
Norm Macdonald, yeah,
and Laura Keitlinger as Maidenhawk.
Yeah, Laura Keitlinger, who people kind of forget was in the SNL cast for a hot minute. The way they wrote her, it kind of felt like this was a Janeane Garofalo part. But Janeane Garofalo, I think, had left the show by this point. So.
Yeah. She has like that kind of little like wordy monologue where she gives Boomerang Man a dressing down.
Yeah. I was like, this feels like a very Janeane Garofalo speech.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, where to start with this one?
And the Night Stalker, he's kind of disturbed to find out that his superhero, he shares his superhero code name with a serial killer.
Yeah,
Richard Ramirez, who I think was a real serial killer.
Yes, absolutely. But there's
I
don't know. Yeah, I think with the sketch, it like the premise ain't that great, and it has a lot of things in it that I really didn't like about season 20, where it had like this kind of frat boy bro humor throughout it. Like Jimmy's on the phone with Superman, and Superman's all depressed, and Jimmy's like, oh yeah, he's talking about how Lois is a tease, and will she ever give it up? I was
right. Like, and then he starts complaining. He's like watching MTV and he starts complaining about the VJ Kennedy.
It's like, why is she wearing glasses? Those ugly glasses. She needs contact. Like that sounds like something just some bro dude would say. It's like that don't make for a good sketch, my guy.
It does have a very bro energy. Honestly, the thing I find the most interesting about this sketch, and I think about the only reason I thought we should do this one, was because Michael McKean plays Perry White,
Yes. Yeah.
and he actually ended up going on to play Perry White for real on the television show Smallville, because his wife Annette O'Toole played Martha Kent on Smallville.
Oh, okay.
So they brought Michael McKean on to do a guest shot as like a young Perry White, and he like meets Clark Kent, and Clark, who's not Superman yet, he like saves Perry's life or something. Like he helps Perry out somehow. I think Perry was like kind of down and out, and I think Perry kind of it starts getting his mojo back, and at the end he's like getting on a bus and he's like, hey, if you're ever in Metropolis, look me up. And
wow.
And I think that's the only time he was on the show. I know he did like a voiceover in the last episode where they sort of flash forward to when Clark is Superman.
Okay.
And you hear Perry yelling in his office, and it was the voice of Michael McKean.
Oh, wow.
But I find it very interesting that he plays Perry White in an SNL sketch, and then he later plays Perry White for real on Smallville. And, pretty good casting.
Yeah. Maybe he sent them this sketch as like his audition.
Who knows? I wonder if he even remembered being in this sketch.
Yeah. It's like, look, just ignore the rest of the sketch. Just look at my performance.
You're right.
Role, but yeah, like in this sketch, you don't hear a lot of laughs really coming from the audience. And the Night Stalker is bummed that he shares a name with the serial killer. And basically, the Earth, Superman doesn't stop the meteor from destroying the Earth, so the Earth gets destroyed. We see some spinning newspapers to end this sketch, saying, Earth gets destroyed by a meteor, everything destroyed except printing press and 2 typesetters.
I did like that joke. That was cute.
Yes. When in doubt,
because it's like, oh, well, first gets destroyed, or if Metropolis gets destroyed, how is this paper still being printed? And then,
they thought that out.
That was cute. I like that joke. I don't know. Like but they're superheroes, but they're lame. It's kind of low-hanging fruit for a comedy sketch. So
yeah, like with the Chris Farley and the boomerang, I'm kind of making fun of like, oh, I just have a wooden boomerang, which I don't. Are any of the comic book characters that they're playing real, like Boomerang? I know there's Captain Boomerang.
No, these were all. I mean, there is a Captain Boomerang.
Yeah,
who was featured in. He was a Flash villain, and he was featured in the Suicide Squad comic, and then he made it to a couple of the Suicide Squad movies. But I mean, he wasn't as lame as the Chris Farley boomerang, because he had like trick boomerangs. Each like boomerang would do a different thing.
Yeah,
he could pitch exploding boomerangs, or he could tie the Flash to a giant boomerang and then fling him out into wherever.
Yeah, he was like Hawkeye, but with boomerangs.
Exactly. Okay.
But like Maidenhawk and Armor Man and Night Stalker, those were all made up?
All made up. All
right.
Yeah. So, that's less fun for me. It's more fun when it's the real characters.
Yeah. It's a choice.
Yeah. It's a choice. Okay, next up, we got a few more sketches. We're getting into the home stretch now. Mm-hmm. We got a sketch called Clark Kent. This is from when The Rock hosted, when Dwayne Johnson was still going as The Rock. So this was The Rock and AC/DC. This is season 25, episode 15 from March 18th, 2000. So as the sketch opens, we're in the Daily Planet. We got Jimmy Fallon as Jimmy Olsen, Molly Shannon as Lois Lane, Chris Parnell as Perry White. They're all leaning out the window, waving goodbye to Superman, who just finished saving Metropolis somehow. And they're like, okay, well, that's done. All right, 3, 2, 1. And then The Rock comes in as Clark Kent, and he's got like the cuffs of his Superman outfit are sticking out of Clark Kent's suit.
Right.
His tie and everything is like very hastily put on. Like you can see the Superman collar sticking out of the neck of his shirt.
Yeah, and he makes a lame excuse as to why he wasn't there. It's like, oh, I had to go to the mail place and mail out my mail.
Yeah. And the joke is, and it's a pretty cute joke, where they're all like, they obviously know that Clark Kent is Superman, but they all just sort of pretend that they don't, but they have fun teasing him.
Right.
Because he's just so bad at keeping his secret identity.
Exactly. So they're all kind of making fun of him behind his back. And,
right.
because like they know it's him because he's like, yeah, he had his paycheck sent to the Fortress of Solitude when he first got here.
Yeah.
Of course we know it's
he first started calling himself Soup R Man.
They'll never be the wiser.
But I, and they're all like, "What a moron!" And I like, though, that they have a joke. They have a line in there. There's like, well, let's give him a break. He has saved Metropolis hundreds of times, so they're like, we'll humor him. And I'm like, okay, that's cute. That's sweet. And at one point, like, The Rock says, like, oh yeah, Superman destroyed that meteor today. And I'm like, at this point, I write in my notes, why so many meteors?
What's all meteors?
Do they think that just Superman just smashes meteors all damn day?
That's Meteor Man, people. Come on.
Yeah. I think that, like, they just vaguely remembered some TV episode or another where Superman smashes a meteor.
He does other things, people.
He does do other things. It was just, I mean, of course, these sketches are written years apart and stuff, and yeah, it's not a big deal, but I just thought it was really funny.
Yes, just the meteor, the themes of the meteor just follow him no matter what. They just lives on.
Yeah. It's they do. There is still a little bit of the frat boy humor in there where they're like, "Hey, you hear that Superman's gay?" Oh yeah, he's totally gay. And then Perry White has a line, pretty funny line, I will admit. He's like, hey, you get Superman in a truck stop bathroom, you won't need kryptonite to bring him to his knees.
That, I was like, God damn it, that is funny.
It's funny. It would never fly today.
God no, Lord no.
I mean, where the joke is just, haha, he's gay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 25 years ago. It's for real. But I feel like it's a funny sketch. It's well performed. Dwayne Johnson is really good in it. I feel like Jimmy Fallon, Chris Parnell, and Molly Shannon are all really good in it. Molly Shannon's Lois Lane is a little different than it is from the previous sketch, I noticed.
Is it really?
Well, I thought it was. Like, she's got much more Margot Kidder energy in this one. And she looks much more like Margot Kidder. Somebody was looking at the first Superman movie when they were doing it.
Interesting.
And I was like, oh, man. Something about Molly Shannon as Lois Lane. I'm like, oh, okay.
How do you do?
Like, hello, nurse.
Oh, Vodio Do.
Yeah. That surprised me.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, overall, I thought the sketch was okay. Mm-hmm. I thought it was all right. Not too shabby.
It's an amusing sketch. I mean, and it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it's done affectionately.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very cute.
Absolutely. So the next, I'm actually kind of surprised you put this one on the sketch because it's not directly a Superman sketch, but
it's not technically, but it uses so much of the Superman tropes and stuff. I said, let's do it. And I this one just tickles me. I just love this one.
I actually do too. I actually like this one quite a bit. So let's talk about it. Moleculo.
The Molecular Man. This is from when Conan O'Brien hosted with musical guest Don Henley, season 26, episode 14, March 10th, 2001. So, Conan O'Brien, he's playing a superhero named Moleculo. The Molecular Man! And that's basically the joke, is like, whenever someone says the name Moleculo, he is compelled to then say, the Molecular Man!
Like, normally, sketches like this where it just...
Yeah. It's literally one joke.
Yeah, it's like one joke, and it hinges on, like, repeating that one line or joke over and over again. Most of the time, I'm like, all right, this is annoying. This is dumb.
Yeah.
For some reason, when Conan does it, I can't stop laughing. Conan
throws himself into the lameness and the artificiality of it, and it is hilarious. I also liked, technically, this sketch. Okay, in the opening little Molecular montage, we see Molecular fighting a robot, and this time around, I recognized it. It was like, oh, that's Robot on the Toilet from Late Night.
Is it? Oh, I gotta go back.
It is. It's the same robot outfit.
I gotta go back and look at that. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I mean, you just see him for a second or two, but I was like, oh, they obviously went down to the 6th floor and they grabbed the Robot on the Toilet outfit.
Wow. Celebrity cameo.
Yeah. And then I like, it starts out he's defeated this big pile of supervillains, and they're all or crooks, and they're all like piled in. And I like that they're all dressed in like this sort of colorful comic strip.
Yeah, they look like Dick Tracy villains.
Yeah, they do. And I think that was sort of the look when they had the Superman, they had the Superman musical. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. I think that's kind of how the people were costumed in that show. Sort of like heightened comic strip type stuff, and I like that. It played into the feel of the sketch. And then so like Moleculo defeats the villains. The two cops played by Chris Parnell and Jerry Minor.
Jerry Minor, yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, well, thanks, Moleculo. The Molecular Man. and it's just kind of awkward.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay. And then Moleculo leaves, and then they still talk about him. It's like, yeah, I wonder where he comes from. Yeah, no one knows very much about Moleculo. And then he just jumps right back into Molecular Man.
And then we go back to the daily newspaper where he works as his secret identity as Brent Barker. And we have Daryl Hammond as a very John Hamilton type of Perry White. Rachel Dratch is the Lois Lane equivalent. And Jimmy Fallon as a Jimmy Olsen type again. and he comes in as his Clark Kent type secret identity, Brent Barker. And when they're like, hey, good job on this last article about Moleculo. He just immediately goes, the Molecular Man. It's so stupid, but it makes me laugh.
Yeah. And then again, like Brett Barker leaves the office, and they talk about like, hey, you notice how you don't see Brent and Moleculo in the same room? You don't suppose that he is Moleculo. And then Brett smashes through the wall and says, the Molecular Man.
Yeah. And I like before that, they were just like, what is wrong with you?
Like, dude, are you high?
Yeah. And so he bursts through the wall, says Molecular Man, and he's like, oh, wait, what gave it away? Oh, it's that. Oh, it's that I always say, he's like, I'm sorry, I just get so excited.
But because his cover is blown, he has to now leave town in order to protect his identity. And then he goes to Mexico, where he works for a Mexican newspaper.
Right.
And
so we cut to like basically the same office, except everyone's wearing sombreros.
Wow.
And Horatio Sanz is there wearing a giant sombrero and I think a serape, and he's got a big mustache. And he mentions Moleculo. And Conan just goes, El hombre de los moleculos.
And then, of course, immediately Horatio's like, oh, you're a molecular man?
Yeah.
And it's like, I cut him.
And they're speaking Spanish, or reading Spanish off cue cards, but like they cut to Horatio Sanz, and Horatio Sanz completely stone-faced. And, he's a guy who's kind of infamous for breaking, but he nails it in this sketch. Hilarious, where he's just like totally nonplussed. And it makes it all the funnier. This sketch is just wonderfully stupid in the best way, and I love it.
This sketch is fantastic. When are we going to get Conan to host the SNL again?
I would love to see him come back and host.
I would celebrate it.
Yeah.
I like, you see sketches like this, you're like, what? Damn, he's so hilarious.
Yeah, and he's a good sketch performer. He throws himself into it with gusto, and he doesn't do anything halfway, which I love.
For sure.
So, yeah, I would love to see Conan host again. I'm surprised this is the only time he's actually hosted.
Yeah, I mean, SNL, what are you doing? Come on, get on the ball.
Maybe it's just because he's one of those people who knows how hard it is,
Probably, yeah, that could be it too.
Because I mean, he's worked for the show. He knows
the grind.
He knows how the sausage is made.
Yeah. But again, this was definitely one of my favorite sketches out of all the sketches.
Top three for sure.
For
sure. All right, next, this is from December 8th, 2001. Host Hugh Jackman, musical guest Mick Jagger, season 27, episode 8. It's called either Superman's Fortress of Solitude or Superman Calls Home. I found it under both titles. So
yes, and this one you can find on Peacock as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this one, Hugh Jackman is Superman. He's
Mm-hmm.
in the Fortress of Solitude, and he's using these crystals to sort of unlock his past and
Mm-hmm.
find out reveal the true mystery of the true identity. And
Yeah.
so with the crystals, he's able to connect to Jor-El, played by Will Ferrell, his
Right.
father. And Jor-El, of course, tells him of his true identity as Kal-El, the last son of Krypton.
Mm-hmm.
All of my knowledge are in these crystals that I bequeath to you, my only son.
Yeah, and
And
and I find it interesting that it's like 2001, and we're still using the imagery and the iconography from Superman the movie. He's Will Ferrell's in the white wig as Jor-El. He's in the white outfit. We got the crystals and the Fortress of Solitude. All that comes from Superman the movie,
yeah,
and yeah, it really made me realize like what a long shadow that like pop culture wise that movie casts.
yeah. I mean,
It's
you mentioned it. I saw on Blue Sky where you're like, and it
mhm.
made me think like, yeah, like it really does. I mean, that does seem it is that
Yeah,
original Superman movies was like the definitive, de facto version of Superman.
yeah, and we've had lots of other Superman versions since then, and some of them have been very good, some of them maybe not as good. But there's something about that first movie that has just taken hold of people's imaginations, and just has stayed in the popular consciousness the way the others have not. And I find that kind of fascinating. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
just
no,
because it was that good, or if it's just because of pop culture osmosis and it's been on TV a lot and stuff, and maybe it's just like what people remember the most. But I found that very interesting because like a good 75% of these sketches take something from Superman the movie.
yeah, no, it was the
Either the
blueprint.
music or the costume designs, or somebody's doing a Brando impression.
Yeah, we're going to talk about another sketch that just came out last year that follows the same
Yeah,
template.
yeah. Um, but so Hugh Jackman is Superman. Yeah, that's right. Wolverine's playing Superman, and
Wow.
he's talking to his father. And after Jor-El finishes, there's just kind of this awkward pause as they don't really have anything to talk about, and he's like, "So you need any money?"
Yeah, I do like
He's like,
how like it just turns into an awkward, the regular awkward conversations any guy would have with their parents, where there's
"Yeah,
not much
yeah."
to say.
And he's like, "Oh, I think your mother wants to say hello." And then Maya Rudolph comes on as Laura, and she sees him in his Superman outfit. She's like, "You look very colorful."
So how are you, sweetie? Do you have any friends?
And he's like, "Oh, well, there is Lois Lane. She's a reporter at the Daily Planet." And she's like, "Oh, you have a girlfriend. Thank God."
Like, no, she's not my girlfriend, Mom.
Yeah. And yeah, the implication is like she was afraid that he was gay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
she's very reassured by the thought of him having a girlfriend.
Yeah, but there's like
Again,
no,
I don't think they would write it in quite that way today.
yeah, because like then that's when Hugh Jackman's like, no, she's just a friend. She's like this other kid I hang out with. Jimmy Olsen is like
Right.
this teenage kid I hang out with, and she's like,
Yeah, and
oh,
she's like,
oh.
oh, yeah.
Hmm.
uh,
And then Will
I mean,
Ferrell.
it's pretty mild as jokes go, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, and at one point they were like, "Oh, do you have a dog?" And he's like, No, I'm thinking about getting one now." It's like,
Ah,
I think it was interesting that they said that Superman doesn't have a dog because, like, Crypto's all over the ads for the new movie. So
yeah. No,
that's
people like dogs.
yeah,
People like
people
dogs.
love the dogs.
Yeah,
And,
Cecily Strong will be there opening night.
she probably will be. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that, but I bet you're right.
Already bought a
Cecily
ticket.
Strong should have played Lois Lane in a Superman sketch.
Oh, now
She'd
you're
have been
cooking.
amazing.
Now you're
Yeah.
cooking. Now you're.
Yeah. I'm
Ooh la
now
la.
immediately resentful that never happened.
I like
What
that.
the hell, SNL?
Oh,
We went a couple decades without any Superman sketches that I could find, and you had Cecily Strong right there. Come
right
on.
there.
Anyway,
C'est la vie.
that's the way it goes.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
then, and I like at the end they bring on Rachel Dratch as his grandmother.
You're like, hi, Grandma.
Yeah,
How are you?
he just starts talking to her to feel better about himself.
Yeah. So,
This was cute. This
Yep.
was, it's not like a laugh riot, but it's amusing enough.
yeah, for sure. I thought this
Yeah.
was cute enough. Again, this was one of those sketches where you see the old cast merging with the new. Like you remember, oh, what?
Yeah.
Maya Rudolph and Will Ferrell were on the same cast for a hot minute.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, pretty cool.
Yeah. So, and that's also just a fun novelty to see Wolverine playing Superman. That's kind of cool.
Marvel DC crossover.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So next we got a couple more recent things. There was one thing we had a relatively recent weekend update joke swap. This is from the last episode of season 46, episode 20, with Anya Taylor-Joy and Lil Nas X. We've actually covered this on the podcast before. Do you remember much about this episode, Darren?
I remember liking it. I remember Anya Taylor-Joy being like a lot more adept at sketch comedy than I guess originally thought. I remember this had some pretty good sketches in it from what I recall.
Okay.
Sorry.
I don't remember as much about this episode. This is like one that my mind is just kind of like dragged to the trash. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I don't remember much about it.
No, I think this one had some good ones. There was that interview with what they did with like the cast of a TV show. I thought that was like
I did rewatch that one recently, and there was also one where everybody's pitching. What was the chess show that she did?
Oh, Queen's Gambit.
Yeah, they're all pitching Queen's Gambit sketches, and they're all just basically bad puns based on Queen's Gambit.
Okay, but yeah, either way, I thought the episode was good, and this joke swap, pretty solid. I thought, as always, they're all pretty solid.
Yeah. So of course, in the joke swaps, we got Colin Jost reading jokes that Michael Che wrote, and Michael Che reading jokes that Colin Jost wrote, and the big thing they're reporting on here is that they're going to do a movie with a black Superman. And Colin Jost says, and Black Superman is a really good choice because, like black people, he was also abandoned by his parents as a baby.
Oh, damn. Yo.
And I guess I should just read these all because it's funnier if the white guy does it. His kryptonite is an honest day's work.
Oh, damn, John, that's crazy.
And then they get away from it. They do some jokes about some other things, and then he later comes back and says, "Oh wait, I just thought of one more." It's like the Black Superman will be Man of Steel, but it'll be Steal.
Remember when I made that Steel joke in the Superman's funeral sketch when we talked about?
That was foreshadowing.
And now the circle is complete.
Yeah. So this is they did have. I think they were talking about a Superman movie with Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was. If I remember correctly, I don't think he was supposed to play Clark Kent. He was supposed to play it was an alternate world version of Superman.
Yeah.
And I can't remember his. He had, I think, a different secret identity. I think they introduced this sometime during the Obama administration.
Yeah.
And he was like the Superman of a parallel Earth, but he was black, and he had a slightly different costume. And that's about all I remember.
Yeah, I remember it was something that I don't think it was ever super confirmed. It was ever confirmed, but
I think it was just kind of in the air for a while there.
Yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon. But
I think if it hasn't happened by now, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, pretty
much. I feel like the moment is maybe a little past. And
yeah, for sure.
And I don't think Michael B. Jordan necessarily needs a Superman movie at this point.
I think he's going to be all right.
He's a pretty big star without that stuff. And but when the story broke, I remember stupid racist people predictably went nuts.
What? Huh.
Yeah. I know, as they are wont to do.
As they are wont. Yes. Birds gotta fly, fish gotta swim, racists gotta be ignorant.
Yeah, they got a racist.
Racist got a racist.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
but it's always good to hear these joke swaps. I always get a kick out of them. A+.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy watching Colin Jost cringe as he says racist shit.
It's my kink.
It is. It's the only way I can achieve completion.
There it is. Happy 4th, everybody.
Yay! Enjoy that mental image.
Oh, God. And our final sketch.
Yeah.
It's a cut for time sketch.
Actually, cut for time sketch. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's Superman from the John Mulaney Chapel Roan episode, season 50, episode 5, November 2nd, 2024.
That's correct. That's correct. So yeah, this is cut for time. Did make it to the show, but again, playing off that Superman the movie iconography, they actually have a subtitle that says like Metropolis 1978, and it's like Superman going to Lois Lane's penthouse apartment to be interviewed by her, and it's Sarah Sherman as Lois Lane, and they dress her exactly like Margot Kidder in that scene in the movie, and they put her in a wig. I'm assuming it's a wig that looks like, and she resembles Margot Kidder enough that it's like a little like, wow.
Yeah, no, it's a good look.
Yeah, and it's also kind of unusual because it's Sarah Sherman. She's more or less the straight person in this sketch. She's not the quirky oddball one.
Yeah, no, she really dials it. She's done that in a few sketches where, like, Sarah Sherman, she's the oddball, but she can dial it down and be the straight person if needed. And in this sketch, she definitely dials it all the way down.
Right. And it's John Mulaney Superman, which is that right there is inherently kind of hilarious.
I'm Superman.
Yeah, and so it starts out very much as you remember it or might remember it from the movie, and then Chloe Feynman comes in as Lois's roommate Glenn,
who's now she's the oddball.
Yeah, and she's wearing like one of those T-shirts with like a bikini body on it, and she's got like this big perm thing, and she's like hitting on Superman and making all these innuendos
about his peanut.
Yeah.
Wow.
At one point, she like crashes through the trellis behind her.
Yeah, just trying to do a trust fall, hoping he'll catch her, but he chooses not to.
Yeah. She's like, "Oh, I thought you were going to catch me," and he just goes, "No, I chose not to."
They do that. They recreate that scene where I think Lois asks Superman about his X-ray vision, and she says like, "What type of underwear am I wearing?" And he tells her pink, and then Glenn asks Superman, "What underwear am I wearing?" Of course, with her legs akimbo.
And she's wearing like these bike shorts, and she's like kind of spread eagled there on the corner.
Yeah, and then he says, "Oh, yellowish brown,"
and she's like, "Nope, it's white." And he's like, "No, look again."
That's not what I saw.
Yeah,
there
was a cute bit where like when Chloe crashes through the lattice, like some of the set like sticks to her. And like when she later moves, like she like gets it off her hip and tosses it over her shoulder, and it like ends up on Mulaney's shoulder. And,
I thought that was pretty hilarious. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but it was pretty hilarious because at towards the end of the sketch, we see Mikey Day coming in as Zod.
I had totally forgotten that Mikey Day played General Zod. I don't think I've rewatched this since it was on, and I was like, oh, holy shit! I totally forgot that. I mean, I remembered the sketch, but I didn't remember that General Zod was in it.
Yeah. This might be the first time we ever see General Zod in any SNL sketch, and I think about it.
Yeah, no, he didn't pop up in any of the others.
Yeah,
it's very much the Terrence Stamp General Zod. He's in the black jumpsuit, the thing. He's got the beard, but then he's just creeped out enough by Chloe as Glenn. He just goes, I'm gonna go. And he's like hovering in midair the whole time. Like Mikey Day had to be on wires for the entirety of the sketch. Because so
so to the end of this sketch, Superman offers to grab Lois and like have them fly off, and he tries to do it, but Superman's like, "Oh wow, you're actually a little heavier than I thought. I thought you'd be." And of course, Lois gets insulted, smacks him across the face, and ends up breaking every bone in her hand because of it.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, I broke my hand in 11 places." Ha ha ha. This one's just okay. Like you watch it and you're like, okay, yeah, I kind of see why that one was cut for time.
Yeah,
I kind of wish it had made the show because I remember like being a little disappointed by that John Mulaney show overall. And I think when I watched this, I was like, this is better than some of the stuff that made it air. But
I feel like this is like one rewrite away from being pretty good. It's like it's almost there. It's like there's enough stuff in here I do like, but it just needs a little bit more.
I like the idea of like Lois having an obnoxious roommate who's disrupting her interview with Superman. I feel like The problem is, I feel like the character's a little more annoying than funny. You know,
Yeah, I get that.
like she should be irritating the characters in the sketch, but she shouldn't be irritating the audience. And it was a little bit like it was irritating the audience, at least from my money.
No, I get that.
So.
Actually, I agree with that. Yeah, Glenn kind of has this like over the top, wacky voice, and saying these kind of little. I mean, it's a fine line to play annoying without actually being annoying. Like you have to play annoying, but at the same time still be like a little charming or entertaining at least. And
I think if I was doing this character, I would totally write a sketch with this premise, but I would have a different type of character as Lois's roommate. A different. She could still be outrageous or disruptive or whatever, or even just like a dipshit person who's just not interested in Superman at all. Like maybe the joke could be like, they're trying to have this big romantic moment, and the roommate's very disruptive because they're watching, something on the TV or on the DVR or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's...
I might try for something more like that. Just like the fantasy of Superman running up against the mundane problems of having a roommate who's annoying.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. But yeah, I can see how this sketch got cut, but it's like this is almost there to like being like pretty good.
I'm glad they put it up on YouTube. I would hate to like hear about this and then never get to see it. So it's nice. It's nice that we got to see it.
It's nice that we got to see it, and that's the episode, guys. We talked about every Superman sketch SNL has ever done.
At least all the ones we could find. There was like a Justice League sketch where there was somebody in a Superman outfit, but I was like, let's not do that. Yeah. We have enough.
We talked about almost every Superman sketch SNL has ever done.
What was your favorite? What would, if you had to do like a top three?
Top three. I mean, what if Superman was in Germany just because it's so damn outrageous?
Yeah, that was the word I was thinking. Outrageous. Yeah.
Superman auditions. And even though it's not a direct Superman sketch, I probably put Moleculo up there.
I think it's purely as a comedy sketch. I think Moleculo is up there, and it's one of the best in there.
Yeah, for sure.
I definitely picked the What If Superman Grew Up in Germany. I have a lot of nostalgic affection for Superhero Party.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. The Rock Clark Kent sketch is a pretty good sketch.
It's a solid one.
Yeah. So there are enough good sketches in here that I feel like it was worth doing.
Yeah, so, absolutely. This was definitely
there's more good than bad.
For sure. Guys, let us know what your favorite SNL Superman sketches. So, drop us a line. Let us know what's up.
So, I mean, we've basically exhausted the topic of Superman and SNL, right? There's nothing we can possibly possibly talk about, right, Darren? Right?
Wrong.
What?
You are wrong, sir. Incorrect.
What? I am totally shocked by this development.
Because this is something, again, that you brought to my attention because I had totally forgotten about this because...
Yeah, well, you would have been pretty young when this aired, I think.
I was like 11, yeah, so...
yeah.
But, so for the next episode of the SNL Nerds, we're going to talk all about the 1998 CBS special, Superman...
88.
What did I say?
You said 98.
Damn it. 1988 CBS special... Superman's 50th anniversary, a celebration of the Man of Steel. STEEL.
Yes. Yeah. So it was Superman's 50th anniversary in 1988, and they went to Lorne Michaels to produce a special about it. I don't know why they went to Lorne Michaels. And it's also weird that this was on CBS.
Yeah, that was that weird. He's like an NBC guy.
Yeah, it's funky. So, I don't know. I haven't watched this in years. I think I watched it on YouTube again years ago. As I recall, it's not that great because it's more comedic than anything. But I thought it would be interesting to check out, and especially in retrospect. But it's produced by Lorne Michaels. It's hosted by Dana Carvey. It's got lots of SNL people in it.
Yeah, we got Franken and Davis is in it. We got Jen Hooks in it. We got I believe Schmeigel's in it, and he wrote on it. And I believe Brian Doyle Murray's in it. Rosie Schuster wrote and co-produced on this thing, and also Bruce McCullough from Kids in the Hall wrote on this. And
nice.
And the music was by the late great Hal Wilner.
Oh, nice. So yeah, a lot of SNL DNA in this. So yeah, it's basically just a whole Superman SNL extravaganza. It's like an hour-long special. You can find it on YouTube. We'll put it up on the Blue Sky profile if you're interested in checking it out. And we'll be back here next week to tell you all about what we thought of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the episode, guys. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. As always, you can follow us on Blue Sky at SNL Nerds. You can check us out on the Non-Productive Network at Non-Productive.com. Donate to our Patreon. Give us some money, please. And thank you. And as always, you can follow me on all the socials at Darren Credible. That's DARIN Credible.
And you can follow me on all the socials at Trumbull Comic. That's TRUMBULL and the word comic. So yeah, that's about it for this week. So please, join us for more Superman stuff next week, and then the week after that, we're gonna actually watch the new Superman movie because Beck Bennett's in that. So.
Ooh, I am super pumped for it.
I am stoked. I'm stoked. I'm looking forward to that. I'm expecting and hoping it's going to be good. I think it's going to be really entertaining. I got a good feeling about it.
We both have good feelings about it. If it's not great, we're going to be honest with it. We're not DC shills. We know you listen.
No, I mean the checks do not clear. So
no, they do not.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I desperately would love to be a DC shill. I mean, please, Warner Brothers, DC Comics, send me money. Yes. I can be bought.
I do have a price.
Yes.
Oh, I can't wait.
And it's lower than you would think.
I am very affordable. I'm like groceries from Aldi. I'm very affordable.
Anyway, you have 2 weeks to cut a check for me. and I will sell out in a heartbeat.
Yes. I'm easy to find on PayPal, Vimeo, Venmo.
Yes.
Just please give me money, please.
Yes.
I'm so poor.
Or just give us money.
Yes. Cold hard cash, crypto, any of it. They take it all.
Yeah. Well, not crypto.
Well, not crypto. Yeah.
Not cryptocurrency.
Yeah. The dog, yes. The actual crypto,
yes.
No.
Yeah. No, I mean, because it's radioactive. That could kill us.
Yes. So cold hard cash, suitcase full of unmarked bills. I take it all.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, we'll be back. Superman special next week. New James Gunn movie week after that. So we'll have fun talking all about Superman. And then, after that, something non-Superman related, probably, I guess. If there is such stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't care for that idea myself, but anyway, we'll be doing that. So please join us next week as we'll be watching the 50th anniversary special of Superman. But until then, nerds out. Yeah.
The molecular.
The molecular man.
This has been a non-productive media presentation. Executive producer, Frank Hablawi. This program and many others like it on the Non-Productive Network is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Please share it, but ask before trying to change it or sell it. For more information, visit non-productive.com.